Heartbroken and abandoned, hear God's message for your life now. A cry in the silence.
There are nights when silence does not comfort but crushes, when the absence of a voice is heavier than any scream, when loneliness presses on your chest until it feels impossible to breathe. Heartbreak and abandonment carry a pain that lingers far beyond the surface. It reaches the marrow of the soul, carving wounds invisible to the eyes of others, but undeniable to the one who bears them. To be left by someone you loved, someone you trusted, someone you believed would stay, is to face not only the loss of their presence but also the collapse of the world you built around them. You look at the empty chair, the untouched side of the bed, the quiet phone, and each detail becomes a knife that twists a little deeper. What once felt safe and alive is now a battlefield of memories where every step hurts. In these moments, time itself becomes an enemy. Minutes stretch into hours, and hours into long nights where the mind plays cruel games. Memories replay in endless loops, the laughter you shared, the words whispered in confidence, the promises spoken with assurance. Each scene feels like a betrayal now, because the ending you hold in your hands does not match the beginning you were promised. And as the silence grows louder, questions multiply. Was I not enough? Did I love too much or too little? Was something in me so broken that they could not stay? These questions have no quick answers, but they echo in the soul with relentless persistence, leaving you weary before the day even begins. The cry in the silence is not always heard by others. You may walk into the world with a smile, pretending strength, showing composure, convincing everyone that you are fine. But when the doors close and the lights dim, the truth comes rushing in. You bury your face in the pillow and tears spill out like rivers. They carry sorrow, confusion, fear, and the deep ache of abandonment. This cry is raw and unfiltered, a language only heaven can fully understand. And while others cannot hear it, God does. He counts each tear as a prayer. He weighs each sigh as intercession, and he bends near to the heart that feels forgotten. The silence of abandonment has a unique cruelty. It convinces you that you are invisible, that you are unwanted, that you have been erased from someone's life as if you never mattered. But that same silence can become holy ground. The absence you dread can become the very space where God begins to reveal his nearness. When love walks away, his presence leans closer. When every human voice grows distant, his whisper finds room to be heard. He does not compete with noise, he speaks in stillness. And though the silence feels empty, it can carry the fullness of his presence if you dare to lean in. Think of this cry not as the end of your story, but as the beginning of something sacred. The fact that your heart still cries out proves that it still beats, that it still longs, that it still carries hope even beneath the weight of pain. A heart that no longer hopes does not cry. A soul that no longer longs does not ache. Your tears are proof of your humanity and of your capacity to love, even after being wounded. And it is in this space of brokenness that God draws near, not with condemnation, but with compassion, not with judgment, but with tenderness. He knows the sound of your silence. He knows the nights when you prayed without words, only with tears. He knows the mornings when you woke up and felt the weight of despair pressing like a shadow that followed you. And in all of it, he has not turned away. The silence is not proof of his absence. It is often the canvas on which his presence paints the deepest truths. For it is in silence that you hear the whisper that says, "You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are not unworthy. You are mine, and I will never let you go." The cry in the silence may feel like weakness, but in reality, it is strength clothed in vulnerability. It is the soul admitting its need, and that admission becomes the doorway through which God enters. The silence becomes the sanctuary. The tears become prayers. The loneliness becomes the meeting place between your heart and the one who never leaves. And though you may feel like everything has ended, what is ending is not your story. It is only a chapter. A new one is being written even now, even here in the silence that you thought would destroy you. So let your cry rise. Do not hide it. Do not despise it. Do not silence it, because the cry in the silence is not wasted.
It is the sound of your soul being heard in heaven, the signal that God Himself is near, bending low, whispering back, "This is not the end. I am with you." When love walks away, it leaves behind more than an empty space. It leaves behind a silence that shouts louder than words, a wound that time alone cannot mend. The departure of someone who once held your hand, who once looked into your eyes with promises of forever, creates a void that goes far beyond the physical absence. It strikes at the deepest parts of identity, shaking the foundation of self-worth and rewriting how you see both yourself and the world. It is not just about who left, it is about what they took when they left. They carried away pieces of your trust, fragments of your hope, and parts of your heart that once believed in a love without end. The sting of rejection is not merely in the act of being abandoned, it is in the aftermath that lingers long after the door has closed. You begin to replay every conversation, every decision, every moment shared. You wonder if one different choice could have changed the outcome. You relive the smiles, the laughter, the secrets whispered in the dark, only to have them now turned into reminders of what can never be reclaimed. The mind becomes a prison of what-ifs, and the heart, a battlefield between hope and despair. Nights feel longer, mornings feel heavier, and every day seems to carry the shadow of the one who walked away. Rejection seeps deeper than memory. It seeps into identity. It whispers that if someone you trusted and loved could leave, then perhaps you are not enough. Perhaps you were too much, too little, too flawed, too broken. These whispers, though false, begin to shape your perception of self. Trust becomes dangerous. Intimacy feels like a risk too high to take, and hope for future love begins to dim. The scar left by rejection is not only the absence of the other, but the erosion of the self you once believed you were. This is why heartbreak feels like more than pain. It feels like a fracture in identity. But here lies a deeper truth. The one who walked away does not hold the pen that writes your worth. Their leaving is not a verdict on your value. It is a reflection of their choice, their limits, their inability to stay. To measure your worth by their absence is to give them power they never deserved. What they took was not your identity, though it may feel that way. What they left behind is not emptiness, but the space for something new, something unshakable, something only God can fill. When love walks away, it feels like the end of your story. You feel stripped of security, direction, and hope. Yet God sees it differently. In His eyes, what has ended is not your destiny, but a chapter within it. He does not allow departures without preparing arrivals. What feels like rejection can become redirection. What seems like abandonment can become the soil where purpose takes root. Where you see loss, He is already planning restoration. The pain of this departure is real, and it should not be minimized. God does not dismiss your tears, nor does He rush you through your grief. He honors it. He meets you in it. But He also calls you not to anchor your identity in the one who left, but in the one who remains. The arms that once held you may be gone, but the everlasting arms of God never let go. The voice that once promised love may have turned silent, but the eternal voice still declares, "You are mine, you are loved, you are chosen." So when love walks away, remember this: it cannot carry your worth with it. The scars it leaves behind may ache, but they do not define you. The absence you feel may break your heart, but it cannot break the love God has for you. Though you stand in the wreckage of what was, you are also standing at the threshold of what can be. And what can be is not shaped by the one who left, but by the one who will never leave. The hidden lie of abandonment. There is a lie that creeps into the heart when abandonment strikes, and it is perhaps the most dangerous of all. It is the lie that whispers that because someone left, you must be unworthy of being loved. It convinces you that rejection is proof of your failure, that their absence is a reflection of your value.
This lie is not loud at first. It begins quietly, weaving its way into your thoughts in subtle ways. You hear it in the stillness of night when you ask yourself why you are not enough. You feel it when you compare yourself to others and assume they must be better, stronger, more lovable. Over time, it grows louder until it becomes a narrative shaping how you see yourself and even how you see God. The danger of this lie is how convincing it feels. Pain has a way of distorting perception, of magnifying weakness, of turning wounds into mirrors where all you see are flaws. When love walks away, the human heart often interprets it as evidence of deficiency. The lie says, if they left, it must be because you are not worth staying for. And slowly that lie takes root, spreading like poison, suffocating hope and eroding self-esteem. You begin to wear it like a label, abandoned, unwanted, unlovable. But truth speaks differently. Truth says your worth is not determined by who left you, but by the one who created you. Truth says love walking away does not erase the value God has placed within you. Truth says abandonment is not proof of your failure, but proof of another's choice. Their decision is not your definition. And yet, until this lie is unmasked, it continues to enslave. It keeps you bound to the past, afraid of the future, and unable to see the present for what it really is. A moment pregnant with the possibility of redemption. This lie is not new. It has been whispered since the beginning of time. Eve was tempted with the suggestion that she was missing something, that who she was and what she had were not enough. The enemy has always used deception to undermine identity, because he knows if he can distort how you see yourself, he can distort how you see God. If he can convince you that you are unworthy, then every promise of God will feel out of reach. If he can make you believe you are unloved, then even the love of heaven will feel distant. The lie of abandonment is not just about your relationship with others. It is an attack on your relationship with the one who never leaves. To believe this lie is to live under a shadow, but to expose it is to step into the light of truth. The truth is that God's love is not contingent on who stays or who leaves. His love is not diminished by human rejection. In fact, Scripture reminds us that even if father or mother forsake us, the Lord will take us in. The constancy of his presence shatters the illusion that being abandoned means being forgotten. On the contrary, it is often in abandonment that his presence becomes most tangible, most real, most transformative. So let the lie be unmasked. Let the deception be exposed for what it is. A strategy to keep you chained to pain that was never meant to define you. You are not abandoned. You are beloved. You are not forgotten. You are remembered. You are not worthless. You are chosen. The departure of another cannot erase the eternal seal of God's love on your life. When the hidden lie of abandonment loses its power, the heart begins to heal. And as it heals, you realize that the story you thought ended with someone leaving is in fact being rewritten by the one who never will. God's presence in the empty room. There is a moment after heartbreak when the room feels unbearably empty. The silence is heavy, the air still, and the absence of the one who left seems to fill every corner. You sit in the quiet and wonder if this emptiness is all that remains of your story. The walls seem to echo with memories, the bed feels larger than before, and the very place that once felt like a sanctuary now feels like a prison of solitude. This emptiness is real, and it presses against the soul with relentless weight. It convinces you that you are alone, unseen, forgotten. Yet it is in this very emptiness that God's presence can be revealed in ways you never imagined. The empty room is not void of life, though it feels that way. What you interpret as silence can become the stage for divine whispers. What seems like absence can become the very proof of presence. God does not always reveal himself in the noise of crowds or the comfort of companionship. Often, he waits until the room is stripped of distraction, until the voices that drowned him out have faded, until the heart is raw enough to listen. And in that emptiness, he draws near, not with thunder or spectacle, but with a quiet assurance that says, I am here. Think of the prophet Elijah, weary and alone in the cave. He expected God to appear in the earthquake, the fire, the mighty wind. But God's voice came in a gentle whisper, so subtle it could have been missed if not for the silence. The empty room works the same way. It becomes the cave where your soul, stripped of illusion, can finally discern what was always true, that God has never left and never will. The presence of God in the empty room does not always remove the ache immediately. The bed may still feel cold, the silence may still sting, the memories may still cut deep, but His presence transforms the atmosphere. It shifts emptiness into intimacy, sorrow into sanctuary. Suddenly, the same room that felt like punishment becomes the very place where healing begins. It is no longer a space defined by absence but by encounter. The emptiness becomes a canvas, and His love begins to paint hope across it. There is something sacred about realizing that you do not need another person in the room to know you are not alone. The one who fills the heavens and the earth chooses to fill the very space where you feel abandoned. He sits with you in the quiet. He listens to the unspoken cries. He breathes peace into the corners where despair once ruled. And when you begin to sense His presence, the room changes. It no longer testifies to who left, but to who stayed. No longer echoes with rejection, but with assurance. It no longer condemns you to loneliness, but declares that love Himself is here. The empty room, then, is not your enemy. It is an invitation. It invites you to stop measuring your worth by human companionship and to begin resting in divine presence. It calls you to see that while people may leave, God never does. While human love may fail, His love never will. And as this truth takes root, the room you once dreaded becomes holy ground. The silence you feared becomes the sound of His nearness, and the emptiness you mourned becomes the very proof that He is enough. So when you find yourself in that empty room, do not despise it. Do not rush to escape it. Sit in it, breathe in it, and listen. For it is there, in the quiet of abandonment, that God whispers louder than ever, "I am here, and I have always been." Tears that speak louder than words.
There are moments when the weight of pain is so overwhelming that words refuse to come. You kneel to pray, but nothing flows except tears. You open your mouth, but your voice trembles into silence. You want to explain the depth of your wound, yet language seems powerless to capture the ache inside. And so you cry, tear after tear, night after night, sometimes quietly in the dark, sometimes in desperate sobs that leave you breathless. To the world, these tears may seem like weakness, but in the eyes of God, they are powerful prayers. Every tear is seen, every drop is counted, and every cry rises to heaven like incense that cannot be ignored. Tears have a language of their own. They speak of love lost, of promises broken, of trust betrayed, of dreams shattered. They hold emotions too heavy for sentences, and in their silent fall, they carry a weight that words cannot. Scripture reminds us that God keeps track of every tear, placing them in His bottle, recording them in His book. Nothing you cry is wasted. Nothing that slips down your face disappears unnoticed. What feels like sorrow flooding uncontrollably is in truth a sacred offering, for God hears even what you cannot say. Think of Hannah, who wept bitterly before the Lord when her heart longed for a child. No eloquent speech, no carefully chosen phrases, just tears, so raw that even the priest misunderstood her. Yet God did not. He heard her sobs as clearly as if she had shouted, and He responded in His perfect time. Or think of Jesus Himself, who wept at Lazarus's tomb. His tears were not weakness, they were holy compassion flowing out of love. Tears, then, are not signs of spiritual failure. They are signs that your heart is still alive, still tender, still capable of love, and still reaching for God even when words collapse. In heartbreak and abandonment, tears often feel like the only prayer left, and that is enough. God does not require polished words to move His heart. He responds to honesty, to authenticity, to the raw cry of his children. Your tears are prayers that bypass language and reach directly into his presence. They declare, even in silence, "I cannot carry this alone." And the God who is near to the brokenhearted leans closer, wrapping you in compassion that the world cannot offer. The beauty of tears is that they cleanse even as they cry out. They wash away the toxins of bitterness. They soften hearts hardened by pain. They release the weight of grief that otherwise would crush the spirit. They prepare the soul for healing, making space for God's comfort to enter. In your darkest hours, when words fail and loneliness surrounds you, your tears become a bridge between your heart and his. And he listens, always. So do not despise your tears, do not hide them, and do not mistake them for defeat. They are prayers in liquid form, each one precious, each one powerful, each one recorded by the God who has never abandoned you. When your lips are silent but your eyes overflow, know that heaven hears. Know that the Father bends close, that the Spirit intercedes, and that your tears are writing a story of healing even now. The day will come when those same tears will no longer fall from pain, but from gratitude. When what you once wept over becomes the very testimony of God's faithfulness. For now, let your tears fall without shame. They are louder than words, stronger than silence, and holy in the presence of the one who sees them all. The enemy's whisper versus God's voice. When abandonment strikes, the silence that follows is rarely empty. Into that quiet space, voices begin to speak. They are not always loud, but they are persistent. They whisper lies that coil around the mind and sink into the heart. These are the enemy's whispers, the subtle suggestions that say you are unwanted, you are unworthy, you will never be loved again. They take the pain of rejection and twist it into a story of identity, convincing you that what someone did to you is now who you are. These whispers are destructive because they sound so close to truth. They echo the fears already alive inside you, and because they blend with your own thoughts, you begin to believe them. The enemy knows that words carry power. He does not need to shout to control you. He only needs to convince you. He whispers into the vulnerable places, planting doubts about your value, your purpose, your future. He magnifies the memory of someone leaving, replaying it until it feels like a prophecy that everyone will leave. He takes one heartbreak and stretches it into a verdict, declaring that you are destined for abandonment again and again. And if you let these whispers go unchallenged, they can become chains binding your soul in fear. But there is another voice. It may be softer, but it is infinitely stronger.
It is the voice of God, the voice that speaks truth in the middle of lies, that speaks peace in the middle of chaos, that speaks love in the middle of rejection. His voice does not accuse, it affirms. It does not condemn, it restores. It does not weaken, it strengthens. While the enemy's whispers say, "You are unwanted," God's voice says, "You are chosen." While the whispers say, "You are unworthy," his voice says, "You are mine." While the whispers predict, "You will be abandoned again," his voice assures, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." The challenge is that both voices often speak at the same time. One feeds fear, the other feeds faith. One drags you deeper into despair, the other lifts you toward hope. And the voice you choose to listen to will shape your reality. It is not that the enemy's whispers have more power. It is that they are familiar, and pain makes them louder. But when you tune your heart to God's voice, when you let His word saturate your mind, His truth begins to silence the lies. Think of Jesus in the wilderness. The enemy whispered distortions, twisting scripture to sow doubt and fear. But Jesus answered with truth, declaring what God had spoken. That is the pattern for you as well. Every time the enemy whispers that you are forgotten, you answer with the truth that you are engraved on the palms of God's hands. Every time he says you are worthless, you declare that you were bought with a price. Every time he says you are alone, you remind yourself that God is with you even to the end of the age. The enemy's whispers are real, but they are not final. God's voice is the one that carries authority, and when you choose to hear him above the noise, the chains begin to break, the lies begin to crumble, and your heart begins to heal. So pause for a moment and ask, which voice has been louder in my life? Have I been agreeing with the whispers of rejection, or have I been leaning into the affirmations of God's love? Because his voice is speaking even now, it is calling you by name, restoring your worth, and declaring that no abandonment can erase his presence. The enemy may whisper lies, but God's voice will always be louder if you choose to listen. The cross as the ultimate abandonment. On the cross, Jesus faced the rawest and deepest form of abandonment. Betrayed by one of his closest friends, denied by another, deserted by nearly all of his followers, and mocked by the very people he came to save. He was stripped not only of dignity, but of human companionship. As he hung there, even the heavens seemed silent. The cry that broke from his lips, my God, why have you forsaken me?" captures the deepest agony of a soul that feels utterly alone. In that moment, Jesus carried the weight of every abandonment humanity would ever know. The loneliness you feel today, the pain of rejection that cuts so deeply, he entered into it fully on that hill called Golgotha. The cross was not only about physical suffering, it was about spiritual desolation. It was the place where the Son who had eternally known the Father's embrace experienced the agony of separation, as he bore the weight of the world's sin. The one who healed the broken was himself broken. The one who called others to follow was left standing alone. And in that moment, Jesus tasted the very anguish that fills your heart when love walks away, when silence becomes unbearable, when abandonment feels final. Why does this matter? Because it means you are not alone in your suffering. Your cries of loneliness are not foreign to him. Your feelings of being forsaken are not beyond his understanding. He knows not only because he is God, but because he lived it, felt it, endured it. When you whisper in the night that you feel abandoned, he answers, "I know." He knows the depth of that pain, and he carries it with you. The cross is proof that your abandonment does not isolate you from him. It connects you to him. And yet, the story does not end in desolation. The cry of forsakenness was real, but it was not the final word. Resurrection followed. Hope rose. Presence returned. The cross teaches us that even the deepest abandonment is not the end of the story, but the threshold to redemption. Jesus embraced the ultimate abandonment so that you would never face yours alone. Because he was forsaken, you can be sure you are never truly forsaken. Because he carried rejection, you can be certain you are forever accepted. Because he entered the silence of separation, you can hear the promise of his presence. I am with you always, even to the end of the age. This truth transforms how you see your own pain. When you feel rejected, you remember the one who was rejected so that you could be embraced. When you feel alone, you recall the one who was left alone so that you would never be. When you wonder if your cries matter, you look at the cross and know they do, because the Son of God bore the very cries of humanity. The cross reframes abandonment. It no longer defines you as forgotten, but as someone infinitely valued, someone worth the sacrifice of love so great it endured ultimate loneliness to bring you eternal belonging. So as you sit in your pain, lift your eyes to the cross. See in it not only the cost of sin, but the depth of God's empathy. You are not walking through abandonment as one forsaken. You are walking it with the one who knows every detail of the ache, and who has promised that no darkness, no silence, no rejection can separate you from his love. The cross is not just a story of sorrow. It is the assurance that even in abandonment, God is with you, and because of him, your ending will never be despair but hope. From shattered pieces to sacred purpose. Heartbreak leaves you in fragments. It feels as if your soul has been shattered into pieces too small to ever be whole again. Every memory is sharp, every thought cuts, and every attempt to move forward feels like walking barefoot across broken glass. The dreams you once held now lie scattered at your feet, and you wonder if anything good could ever come out of this wreckage. Abandonment does more than break hearts. It breaks confidence, it breaks vision, it breaks trust. And yet, the story of God has always been one of taking what is broken and transforming it into something sacred. The shattered pieces of your life are not useless in His hands. They are the very material He uses to create beauty. Think of the potter who gathers clay that seems unfit, reshaping it into a vessel of honor. Think of the mosaic artist who takes fragments of glass and stone, arranging them into patterns of breathtaking beauty. What once seemed ruined becomes the foundation of something greater than it could have been in its original form. So it is with your heartbreak. The very pieces you think disqualify you are the ones God redeems to display His strength and purpose. When you are abandoned, the instinct is to hide the brokenness, to cover the scars, to pretend you are whole even when you are not. But God does not ask you to deny your pain. He invites you to bring it to Him. He meets you in the ruins and whispers that your story is not over. Every scar can tell a testimony. Every wound can become a well of compassion. Every fragment can reflect His light in ways that perfection never could. The cracks in your heart are not proof of failure. They are proof that you have lived, that you have loved, and that you are still here. And in His hands, they become the places where His glory shines through most clearly. This transformation does not happen overnight.
It begins in the small acts of surrender, choosing to believe that your pain is not wasted, choosing to trust that God can build from ashes, choosing to see yourself not as ruined, but as being remade. Each day, piece by piece, He rebuilds you, not into who you were before, but into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Someone who carries depth forged in suffering and resilience born from faith. Someone who knows firsthand the healing presence of God and can testify of His goodness even in the midst of sorrow. The sacred purpose hidden in heartbreak is not always visible at first. You may not yet see how these shattered pieces will fit together, but trust that they will. God wastes nothing. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of loneliness is woven into a larger story that will one day reveal meaning. The pain that feels unbearable today may become the very source of strength that helps someone else tomorrow. The scars you carry may become the evidence that healing is possible, giving hope to those who believe they are beyond repair. So do not despise the shattered pieces of your life. Place them in God's hands because only He can transform brokenness into beauty, wounds into wisdom, rejection into redirection. What others meant for harm, He can use for good. What abandonment tried to destroy, He can use to build. You are not discarded. You are being reshaped. And when His work is done, you will see that the pieces you thought were shattered beyond repair have become a testimony of sacred purpose, a living witness that even in heartbreak, God creates beauty that endures. Stories of restoration. When the weight of abandonment feels unbearable, it is easy to believe that no one could possibly understand your pain, that your story is uniquely hopeless. Yet woven throughout history and scripture are countless stories of people who stood in the ruins of rejection and still saw the hand of God lift them into restoration. These stories are not distant tales. They are reminders that what feels like an ending can become the very ground where new beginnings take shape. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, abandoned in a foreign land, and later forgotten in prison. His life was a series of rejections layered one upon another, each one deeper than the last. Yet behind every betrayal, God was writing a greater story. The very chains that bound him became the path that led him to purpose, until one day he stood not as the forsaken brother, but as the ruler who saved nations. What others meant for harm, God used for good. Joseph's story reminds you that betrayal is not the last word. God's restoration is. Consider David, the shepherd boy overlooked even by his family, rejected by Saul, forced into exile, and hunted as though he were worthless. His journey was scarred with abandonment, yet he became the king after God's own heart. The psalmist whose words still comfort countless souls today. Out of rejection, songs were birthed. Out of exile, faith was deepened. Out of despair came worship that has endured for centuries. David's life teaches that even in the darkest caves of isolation, God's presence brings songs of deliverance. Or think of Ruth, who faced the grief of widowhood and the loneliness of starting over in a foreign land. She knew abandonment intimately, yet her faithfulness led her into a story of redemption. She became part of the lineage of Christ himself, showing that even those who feel forgotten are woven into the very fabric of God's greatest work. Her life proves that abandonment can open the door to belonging in ways unimaginable. Beyond the pages of Scripture, stories continue to unfold in the lives of those who have been abandoned, yet found new strength in God. The man who was rejected in love, but discovered a deeper calling to serve. The woman who was left behind, but built a future stronger than the one she thought she lost. The countless lives where tears of heartbreak became testimonies of breakthrough. Each story whispers the same truth. You are not alone, and your pain is not permanent. Restoration does not mean erasing the past, but transforming it. The scars remain, but they no longer bleed. The memories stay, but they no longer define. The loss is real, but it becomes the soil where God plants seeds of hope, growth, and purpose. The God who restored Joseph, David, Ruth, and countless others is the same God who holds your story today. He has not forgotten you, and he will not abandon you to the ruins. So when you feel like your story is over, remember these stories of restoration. Let them remind you that your pain can be a doorway, your tears can be the rain that waters new beginnings, and your scars can be the evidence of a God who heals. What you see as broken beyond repair, he sees as the canvas for his glory. And just as he has done for generations before you, he can and will turn your abandonment into a testimony of restoration that will speak louder than your pain ever did. Learning to release what broke you. One of the hardest steps after abandonment is learning to release the weight of what broke you. Pain has a way of clinging to the heart like chains, dragging memories into the present and replaying them until they become your reality. You find yourself reliving conversations, analyzing moments, wondering what you could have done differently. The wound becomes a cycle of self-punishment, a loop that never seems to end. Letting go feels impossible because your heart insists that holding on somehow preserves what was lost. But the truth is, clinging to what broke you keeps the wound open and prevents healing from beginning. Releasing does not mean pretending it never hurt. It does not mean denying that betrayal cut deep, or that abandonment shattered your trust. To release is not to minimize the pain, but to refuse to let it define your future. It is choosing freedom over bondage, healing over bitterness, hope over despair. Forgiveness, though difficult, becomes the key. Not because the one who hurt you deserves it, but because your soul deserves to be free from the weight of resentment. Holding on to anger binds you to the one who left. Releasing them severs the chain and allows you to step into life again. Jesus spoke often about forgiveness, not as a burden, but as liberation. He knew that to forgive is to open the door to your own healing. When he hung on the cross, abandoned and betrayed, he prayed, "Father, forgive them." That act did not erase the pain, but it prevented pain from having the final word. To release what broke you is to follow that same path, to place the burden in God's hands, and to trust that justice, healing, and restoration belong to Him. This release is not an event, but a process. Some days you will feel lighter, other days the weight will try to creep back in. But each time you choose to release, each time you hand the pain back to God, chains fall a little more. Slowly, the grip of the past loosens, and your heart begins to find space for new beginnings. Releasing is not about forgetting. It is about refusing to live imprisoned by memories. It is about allowing your scars to remind you of God's faithfulness rather than of human failure. The enemy will try to convince you that holding on keeps you strong, that replaying the pain keeps you in control. But in truth, it only keeps you enslaved. The real strength is in letting go, in refusing to let what broke you dictate the rest of your story. Freedom begins where surrender begins. And surrender is not weakness. It is the bold declaration that you will no longer let the one who left continue to control your life. So take the step.
Speak it aloud if you must. I release what broke me. I release who hurt me. I release the pain that tried to destroy me. Each declaration is a chain snapping. Each prayer is a key turning. Each choice is a step closer to healing. You cannot change what happened, but you can choose not to carry it any longer. And as you release, you will discover that the weight you thought would crush you becomes the very place where God fills you with strength. Releasing is not forgetting. It is living free. And the moment you choose to let go, you open the door for God to step in and write the next chapter of your story. One not marked by abandonment, but by renewal. Not defined by loss, but by love that will never leave. The sacred rebuilding of identity. Abandonment has a way of tearing apart not only relationships but also identity. When someone walks away, the heart begins to question everything. Am I still valuable? Am I still lovable? Did their leaving prove that I am not enough? These questions do more than wound. They dismantle the framework of how you see yourself. The one who once affirmed your worth is gone, and their absence echoes louder than their presence ever did. It feels as if the pieces of who you are lie scattered across the floor, too broken to be put back together. But this is where the sacred work of God begins, the rebuilding of identity. God does not reconstruct you into the version that existed before heartbreak. He does something greater. He builds a new foundation, one not based on human affirmation, fragile promises, or the presence of another person, but on His unshakable truth. He takes the lies whispered by abandonment, "You are unwanted, you are forgotten, you are unworthy," and replaces them with eternal declarations. "You are chosen, you are loved, you are mine." This rebuilding is not cosmetic. It is not a mask to cover scars. It is a restoration from the inside out. A deep restructuring of the soul where identity is anchored not in what people say, but in what God has already spoken. Think of Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times and must have felt the crushing weight of failure and abandonment, of abandoning the very one he loved most. Yet after the resurrection, Jesus did not leave him in shame. He restored him with words that rebuilt his identity. "Feed my sheep." Peter's denial did not define him. God's calling did. In the same way, abandonment does not define you. God's love does. His voice rebuilds what rejection tried to destroy, shaping you into someone who knows that worth is not earned, it is given by grace. The rebuilding of identity also means learning to see scars differently. Instead of viewing them as reminders of weakness, they become testimonies of survival, proof that even when abandoned, you were never truly alone. Your scars are not evidence of defeat but of endurance. They tell the story of a heart that refused to quit, a soul that chose to rise, and a God who remained faithful through it all. Identity rebuilt on these truths is stronger than before, because it no longer depends on fragile foundations but on eternal love. This sacred rebuilding is not instant. It is a process of daily surrender, of allowing God to speak louder than memory, of choosing to believe His truth even when feelings rebel. Some days you will still feel the sting of rejection. Some days the whispers of unworthiness will return. But each time you declare, "My value is in Christ, not in who left me," you lay another brick in the rebuilding. Each prayer, each step of faith, each act of trust strengthens the walls of your new identity. In the end, the sacred rebuilding of identity is not about becoming who you were before, but about becoming someone new, someone unshakable, someone rooted in truth, someone who carries the light of God's love into the world as proof that abandonment does not have the final word. You are not defined by who left. You are defined by the one who remains, and He has declared from the beginning of time that you are His, that you are loved, and that nothing can separate you from His embrace. Hope rising in the dark. darkness has a way of convincing you that it will last forever. After heartbreak and abandonment, every day can feel like night, every thought heavy, every breath a reminder of emptiness. You look ahead and see no future, only shadows stretching endlessly. The weight of despair presses against your chest, making it hard to believe that light will ever return. But even in the deepest darkness, hope begins to stir. It does not arrive with fanfare or blinding brilliance. It begins as a flicker, so small you might miss it if you are not looking. Yet that flicker carries more power than the darkness that surrounds it, because even the tiniest light can break the hold of night. Hope is God's gift to the brokenhearted. It rises quietly, often when you least expect it. A verse that suddenly feels alive. A prayer whispered through tears that brings a strange calm. A sunrise that seems painted just for you.
Hope does not deny the pain. It acknowledges it, but it insists that pain is not the end. It tells you that what you feel today will not last forever, that there is more ahead, that the story is still unfolding. Like seeds buried in the soil, hope grows where you cannot see it, waiting for the right moment to break through the surface. Scripture reminds us that hope is an anchor for the soul. Anchors do not remove the storm, but they hold you steady until it passes. Hope functions the same way. It grounds you in God's promises when everything else feels uncertain. Even when your emotions tell you there is no reason to believe, hope whispers that God is still faithful, that His plans are still good, that His presence is still with you. It teaches you to look not at the darkness that surrounds, but at the light that is promised. Think of Job, who sat in the ashes of loss, stripped of family, health, and comfort. If anyone knew darkness, it was him. Yet even there he declared, "I know that my Redeemer lives." That single truth carried him through nights that seemed unbearable. Hope is not the denial of reality. It is the insistence that God's reality is greater than yours. It is the courage to believe that even if today feels like death, tomorrow can bring resurrection. Hope rising in the dark does not always change circumstances immediately, but it changes you. It gives you strength to keep moving, faith to keep believing, courage to take one more step. It transforms despair into endurance, silence into expectation, and emptiness into anticipation of what God will do next. When you hold on to hope, you are declaring war against the lies of abandonment. You are refusing to let darkness define your destiny. And here is the truth. Hope is not just a feeling, it is a person. Christ Himself is hope embodied. His resurrection is proof that no darkness is permanent, no grave is final, no abandonment is absolute. When you cling to Him, you cling to hope that cannot die. Even in the pitch-black night of your soul, His light is rising, steady and sure. So do not despise the flickers of hope you feel. Nurture them, protect them, let them grow. For they are not illusions, they are the first signs of a dawn that is coming. Hope is already rising in your darkness, and soon it will flood your life with light. A personal word for the listener. Right now, this is not just another message you stumbled upon. This is a moment, a divine appointment, a personal word spoken directly to your heart. You may feel abandoned, rejected, unseen, but God sees you. He knows the nights you cried yourself to sleep, the mornings you woke up with heaviness pressing on your chest, the questions that haunt your thoughts. Why was I not enough? Why did they leave? Will this emptiness ever end? And here, in this very moment, His Spirit leans close to whisper, "You are not forgotten. You are not unworthy. You are not alone." He says to you, "My child, I have never left your side. When they walked away, I stayed. When they broke their promises, my covenant with you remained unshaken. When you felt invisible, I was counting every tear. Your value has never been tied to who abandoned you, but to the love I poured out for you before you were even born. You are mine, and nothing can take you from my hand." This word is not general, it is personal. It is not for the masses, it is for you. In the silence of your pain, He is speaking life. In the heaviness of your rejection, He is declaring worth.
In the ruins of your heartbreak, He is building hope. Do not mistake His quiet presence for absence. He is closer now than ever. His Spirit surrounds you. His love pursues you. His grace upholds you. Let this word settle deep into your soul. You are loved with an everlasting love. The one who left does not have the authority to define your worth. The emptiness in your heart is not proof of your failure, but a space God Himself is filling. The lie that you are unlovable dies here, because the cross already proved how priceless you are. So hear His voice today. It is not a voice of condemnation, but of compassion. Not a voice of anger, but of affection. Not a voice of rejection, but of relentless love. He is saying, I will restore you, I will heal you. I will lift you from this valley and set your feet on higher ground. You are my beloved, and nothing, not abandonment, not heartbreak, not despair, can separate you from my love. Take this personally because it is meant for you. God is not just speaking to humanity. He is speaking to your name, your pain, your story. And the word He speaks is this: you are mine, and I will never abandon you. The final embrace. God has not abandoned you. Abandonment tries to convince you that your story is over, that your heart will always ache, that loneliness will always be your companion. But this is not the truth. The truth is that the author of your life has written a different ending, one where pain does not have the last word, and rejection is not the final chapter. Right now, God extends His arms toward you, not with judgment, but with embrace. It is the embrace that heals what words cannot, that mends what time alone cannot fix, that restores what human love failed to protect. This embrace is eternal, unfailing, and it belongs to you. The cross already proved this reality. Jesus bore the ultimate abandonment so that you would never face yours alone. His resurrection shattered the silence of despair and announced forever that hope lives. That same resurrection power is at work in your life today. The God who rolled away the stone will roll away the weight on your chest. The one who called life out of death will call new beginnings out of your brokenness. The one who declared, I will never leave you nor forsake you, has bound Himself to you with a covenant stronger than betrayal, deeper than heartbreak, and more enduring than any human vow. This is the final word over your life. You are not abandoned, you are embraced. You are not rejected, you are chosen. You are not forgotten, you are remembered by the God who calls every star by name, and yet knows every detail of your tears. The emptiness you feel is not evidence of His absence, but the very space He fills with His presence. And when you open your heart to that presence, you will find that what you thought was the end becomes the doorway to renewal. So lift your head, even if tears still fall. Breathe deeply, even if your chest still aches. Let His embrace surround you. This is not the conclusion of despair, but the beginning of restoration. God has not abandoned you. He never has, and He never will. In the final embrace of His love, you are safe, you are whole, and you are home.